Welcome to the Worldwide Doula podcast. I'm Barry, I'm a registered nurse and birth doula, and each week I'm joined by a new guest speaker to talk about all things pregnancy, birth, babies, and parenthood. So it's time to sit back and relax as we get into some juicy topics. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Worldwide Doula podcast. Today I'm here with a beautiful and amazing woman, Nadine Lee. Nadine is a teacher of the feminine tantric arts, and she is also a feminine embodiment coach. Whew, that is a mouthful. She is the founder of Tantric Alchemy, a community for women, and she's recently written a beautiful book called Sex Priestess. Welcome to the podcast, Nadine. It's so lovely to have you here with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Today we're going to be exploring a topic that many mothers wonder about, and it's often not talked about that much. We're going to be talking about how to reconnect with your sexual self after having a baby. It's a real personal journey, and we're here to discuss it to help you navigate this part of your life. It is a huge transition. Do you want to start by telling us how you got into the world of feminine tantric arts and sexual liberation?
So, I write about it in my book, but I'll succinctly summarize it for this podcast. So basically, from a really young age, I remember being 5 or 6 years old and tapped into my sexuality and feeling, orgasmic energy and even self-pleasuring at like a really young age, having my first orgasm, self-pleasuring. And then when I was around 7 years old, I experienced sexual abuse from a family friend. And so it was like almost like I had this, erotic innocence, or this, pure, innocent sexual energy, like life force energy moving through me. And then it was like fragmented through that experience. And it's like when I kind of shut down a lot of pleasure and almost like associated pleasure with, I did associate pleasure with shame, because what used to feel good and just an erotic exploration of myself was now kind of laced with confusion. So that led me on this path, like up until I would say all through my teenage years, there was always this like kind of disconnect and confusion, and it manifested in things like eating disorders, feeling really disconnected from my body, holding a lot of shame around my sexuality. And I knew that, I wanted to heal this. And I didn't even tell anyone about this experience until I was 18. So that was a huge opening. Like that was the first step in healing, like telling my family about it. And then I thought, because I hadn't heard of I knew the alternate world existed, but like it wasn't really my reality. So I'm like, well, maybe I should just go to therapy and see a psychiatrist to heal this. And I tried that route, and that didn't really help me at all. So I did that for about a year or two. And then I found at first meditation and yoga, and then quickly after that, tantra. And this is when everything sort of clicked into place, and I started to feel safe in my body again, and a sense of mind body spirit connection. And then, as I deepened in the tantric practices, that's when I got opened up to, some of the sexual healing practices. And this was just the missing link for it all. So that's when my healing journey started officially. And and I was just kind of on this exploration path, and I didn't have any intention to do this for work. I actually was like, that wasn't really in my peripherals. I was just trying to figure out how to heal myself. And then I knew I wanted to work in this realm. At the time, I was studying nutrition. So, I was working with women specifically around body image, which is actually linked a lot of the time with the femininity and sexuality. In my own experience, that was the core of my eating disorder. And I've found there's been a link with a lot of my clients. Like when you go underneath the eating disorder and body image stuff, it's usually stemming around the sexuality piece and femininity. So it's like I didn't go completely in another direction, but it was just kind of the next step. I was already working with women in this way. And then once I'd kind of healed a lot of my sexuality, then I started bringing that into my clients and studying more to become a better practitioner, to hold space for women to heal their body image and sexual traumas and reconnect to their sexuality in a really powerful way.
That's an amazing journey. Like it's something that a lot of people don't talk about when they've been sexually assaulted or sexually abused. And normally they do find it really hard to come back out of that and find their way back towards, finding pleasure. So that's amazing that you were able to do that. And it brought you to helping other women and helping the community. So that's amazing. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. For listeners who may not be familiar with the term feminine tantric arts, what exactly is that? What does it include?
Yeah, so it's really just the tantric practices that are specifically designed for the female body. So under that umbrella of feminine tantric arts is the practices that I have focused on with self-healing and then bring to my clients has been mainly working with the womb, connecting to the womb space, healing a connection to our period, which is obviously so linked to eventually giving birth. And then another aspect is working with some of the Taoist practices, such as the jade egg. So it's a huge part of the healing process and reconnection to your sexuality, the jade egg practice, and then self-pleasure practices, cultivation practices of your erotic energy, healing practices of your erotic energy, and then how to really channel that into your creativity, whatever it is you're wanting to create or birth. So that's really like the umbrella term for what I work with and what, others that work in this realm focus in on.
And how does Tantra differ from common perceptions of sexuality? Obviously, it's from a little bit of an alternative view, as you mentioned before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Tantra to me and what I've learned and studied over the years, it's really a way of life, first and foremost, living through your five senses and actually seeing things as sacred. Like everything that we're doing is a sacred act and connecting us to the divine. So it's not just like, you're feeling connected to the divine when you're in a temple. It's like you can be connecting to your sense of taste, eating a beautiful meal, and you're so present that you feel this connection to the divine, or smelling something beautiful and your sense of smell gets aroused and you get taken into an altered state. So it's living in a way that's more intentional and sacred through the five senses, through the body. And when it comes to sexuality, it's really Tantra sees our sexuality as the most potent force on the planet, as well as love. And our sexual energy, it creates life. So the tantric practices, the more of the tantric arts practices for men and women, the goal of it is to really preserve that sexual energy and learn how to circulate it through our body. So it's not being wasted and leaked out of us unconsciously. And so how that looks like in lovemaking with a partner is, moving from just primal animalistic like fucking to actually using this act as like, again, like a prayer and a way to connect to the divine. So your lovemaking, it doesn't just stay in like the primal root chakra, just it actually is a way to unlock energy within your body to go into heightened states of consciousness and altered states and to heal you both and experience like that super consciousness through your sexuality. So it's really approaching it from that direction. And obviously to have those experiences, a lot of Tantra is about purification. So, purifying your physical body, your emotional body, so that this life force energy, this sexual energy, once you start to play with it and move it, it's got a clear channel to move through. So yeah, it's a whole journey. Like it's not just like a quick fix. It's like purification of your emotions can take like years. And then you're ready for like, then starting to move the energy through your body. So
it sounds amazing. It sounds beautiful, connecting to a deeper self. A lot of people are very, I wouldn't say like shallow in the way that normally people say, but they are very shallow in the fact that they're not like spiritual. They're not connected to themselves properly, the inner self. And I think that plays a huge role when you're sexual.
Yeah.
When women come to you, what are the common fears and misconceptions that they have around reconnecting with their sexuality?
Well, I guess like the first one is that you need to have a partner to do this. That's one misconception. You can do all this alone, and the tools that I'm mentioning, like the jade egg and conscious self-pleasure and yoni de-armoring with like a yoni wand, so self-healing with the yoni wand, you can do all this yourself. And just for those who don't understand what a jade egg is, it's a precious, semi-precious stone made out of nephrite jade, and it's a practice rooted in the Taoist Tantric lineage, which has been practiced for over 2,000 years. And it's really designed to tone your pelvic floor. So you insert the egg inside of you and do certain breathing practices and movements and sounding, and it tones your pelvic floor. So in that, it's healing sexual traumas that may be stuck in the yoni itself and in the womb itself and around the cervix. And toning the pelvic floor really is the key to your vitality and youthfulness, because you're, redirecting your life force energy up your body instead of it unconsciously. It's always moving down. But if we don't tone these muscles, then we're going to be losing so much life force. And also having a toned pelvic floor, as you know, as a doula, like that's so important for birth and post-birth. So it's actually like such a foundation for healing sexual trauma, but also pre-birth and post-birth. You're not meant to do the practice when you're pregnant, but 100% before and then after. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that, because some people might be like, what is a jade egg? What are you talking about? So yeah, you can do these practices alone. That's some other misconceptions.
Is there like a fear that people have around, obviously if they've had some trauma in the past, even if it's birth trauma, there might be some fears coming back into connecting with your sexuality. I did some research about the topic of, getting back into your sexual self after having a baby. And there were some studies that found that on average, only about 50% of couples get sexual in the first 6 to 8 months after giving birth. And that's really shocking. I mean, I don't know what it's like. I haven't had my babies yet, but that's really shocking. But there's valid reasons behind it. The fact that, the hormones that you release when you're breastfeeding actually almost send you into a menopausal state. You stop producing vaginal secretions as much. You stop being so aroused as easily. So you stop producing that natural lubrication. You have to start using more artificial lubrication. Obviously, there might be some actual trauma down there from an episiotomy, which, may I mention, most of the time is not even needed.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of education about that. And then also the depth. It might be painful for them to have sex physically, and then there might be an emotional part for them. That's the reason why they wouldn't want to have sexual intercourse. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about, sex is not just vaginal penetration. It's about being sexually connected with yourself, sensual touching, stroking, talking with your partner if you have a partner, sexual talking, saying even simple compliments, it's all part of like the foreplay. So yeah, they actually did testing with a bunch of women, and these were just women who had normal, uneventful, natural births, and how they helped these women get back into contact with their sexual selves, or comfortable with sexual intercourse after birth, was trying new positions, making sure that it's not painful for them, changing the pace, slowing it down, being in the moment with your partner, feeling the emotions there, enjoying the sensations that you're feeling, and communicating and being open and being patient, asking them to be patient with you, because you're getting back into contact with this part of yourself that you've had to let go a little bit of. And it's amazing how sexual pregnancy and birth can actually be. And there's a lot of stuff out there about orgasmic birth.
Yeah, there's a really powerful documentary called Birth as We Know It that I recommend to so many of my clients who are, having babies, because most of us are taught by our mothers or grandmothers, their experience, and I don't know about your mother and aunties, what they shared, but, my mom, my auntie, my grandma, it was all like horror stories, like, oh, it's going to be the worst day of your life, blah, blah, blah. So that was like, that's all that I've been told about it. I'm like, no, there surely has to be another way. But like anything, we need to see proof that this is possible. So this documentary opened my eyes to a whole new world. And also I know so many sisters who have had orgasmic births and just beautiful births, so I've got all these imprints from other women, and also this documentary, but that documentary specifically goes into this woman who had an orgasmic birth. And I was like, whoa, that's next level. At the time, I was just like blown away. And it's really just educating ourselves to see the other possibilities. There's always another alternative, and not taking on other people's imprints of their experience. That applies for anything. Like I just published my book, for example, and all these people sharing when I first started the journey saying, oh, my experience was horrible, publishers are horrible, blah, blah. And I had to sit and come back into my center and just be like, no, my publishing is going to be easeful and effortless, and it's obviously stuff will come up, but I'm not having this horror story like all these people are projecting. And I just held that vision, and that's what my experience was. It was easeful, effortless, so it's the same thing. We can apply these beliefs to anything, and especially to birth. And I feel it's really about preparing, long before. So if you're just hearing this now and you want to have a baby one day, starting to really connect to your body now and do these practices now, because the more connected you are to your body, I feel that's really what allows for you to trust your body, because that's a big thing. I feel a lot of women don't trust their bodies because they're not connected to their bodies. So there's a lot of fear around it. So starting to really come into your body, heal that trauma, really feel safe and trust your body knows what it's doing. And also with the sexuality piece, it's like, yeah, getting connected to your sexuality well before. And then, of course, there's going to be a phase after, just the fact that you've literally given birth to a human, like your yoni has been expanded, your body has gone through a huge, like it's a lot to hold in our bodies. Just, it's a big process. So the body will need to recuperate. And then it's like your body is now feeding a child. So what used to feel like maybe a pleasurable nipple stimulation with your partner is now a function to feed a human. So it's like your primal brain switches on, and it's like, no, these organs are now for my child's survival. So of course that's happening, and I think it's okay to just be with that and not feel pressure like, oh, I have to get back and have sex with my partner straight away. Like, because that's just not going to open you up, because the feminine opens sexually through patience and time and not rush or force. So really being gentle with yourself. And I feel this is where Tantra comes in, because that old way of having sex, of basically just root chakra procreation, it shifts into, so you've procreated a baby, but now how can you bring in Tantra practices that actually, you can run orgasmic energy together and you're fully clothed sitting down. You might just be in, yab yum and just soul gazing and breathing together. So there's so many tools that you can now bring in to move your sexual energy from just genital penetration, stimulation to, in that healing phase after you've just given birth, to like a meditation state. So yeah, I feel it's a really beautiful time. And yeah, it doesn't have to be the penetration in order to have sex. It can be literally soul gazing with your partner, or receiving a beautiful sensual massage, and just really, yeah, breathing together, connecting in these ways that are really deep, like it's a really beautiful opportunity to take it to another dimension, your lovemaking.
It does start with that connection first. Like maintaining that connection with your partner is part of the recovery process. And I remember studying about Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. Have you heard of that before?
Yeah.
And I looked it up because I was like, I swear sex is somewhere on there. Sexual intimacy is somewhere on the Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. And it's number 3. Sexual intimacy is number 3 on Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. So it's obviously a very important part of who we are as humans. It's not like this other study that I read just before said that not having sexual intercourse can actually affect you immensely, physically, psychologically, how we are as humans. It's completely affected if we do not have sexual intercourse and have that connection. Our needs aren't getting met. But going back to what you were saying about becoming a mother, the process of becoming a mother really does take away from, nipple stimulation used to be a sexual part of your foreplay. It's interesting because when you are breastfeeding and lactating, it's the same hormones that are released as the pleasure hormones that we get in our bodies when we're stimulated for sex. So, I mean, obviously they mean different things, as you said before, but it's the same hormones. It's the same pleasure hormones that we're getting, and it's all part of that intimacy and feeling those feelings that you get when you're sexual with your partner. Quickly, what is soul gazing?
It's basically just sitting in front of your partner and just coming into presence and looking at each other, left eye to left eye. This is meant to be the soul. So connecting in that way and synchronizing your breathing together. And you can go into altered states of consciousness through this, and really even orgasmic states. It's magical what can happen through that, but it really helps as couples really reconnect. And especially in that process of birthing, there's so much that's happened, and now you're not a maiden anymore. Now you're a mother, and the man's now a father, and it's like you've got this new human being. So it's so important to stay connected as the couple, first and foremost, like as mother and father, and it just deepens intimacy between partners. But yeah, a lot of couples who have been together for like 20 years, they've come worked with me and they've never even looked at each other in the eyes like that, like maybe just briefly in passing, but actually sitting and like for extended period of time actually seeing one another. And they just had like huge breakthroughs, and just like so many walls got dissolved and they just deepened. So it's such a simple thing, but it requires us to be really vulnerable and be seen. And often when people do it for the first time, they laugh because it's like they feel uncomfortable, being seen, or they start crying, so much can come up. So it's really beautiful.
It's amazing how something so simple can be so powerful. You don't have to have sex just after you've had a baby. Things down there aren't the same.
Yeah.
It's completely normal to feel a little bit out of yourself and not yourself, because, hormonal changes, you're assuming this new role as a mother and stepping away from your old roles of being a sexual woman in a sexual relationship. And changes in your body are huge. And also the fatigue level also add to it. But having conversations, or even just, sex talk, I don't know what you would call that in tantric words, having that sexual talk, saying things that might turn each other on, having that connection actually helps women cope with the demands of early motherhood and the sleeplessness. Having the release of the hormones actually sets you up to be more prepared for that. So it's really interesting how it comes in play just after you've had a baby, something that you would think of, no, don't even touch me, I've just pushed a baby out of my vagina, like I don't want your penis anywhere near me.
Yeah.
Can tantric practices help with healing sexual trauma and insecurities?
Yeah, for sure. That's what my journey was. Like, you've got to go through the body to heal really any trauma. Amazing book on this is called The Body Keeps the Score. I don't know if you've read this book. Essentially, the body keeps the score. Like, so when we experience traumas, it often forms, an emotion, and these emotions and these memories, they don't get stored in our brain, they get stored in the body. And so sexual trauma obviously gets stored in the sexual organs. And so there's only so much talking therapy you can do to, like, it's helpful, but it's only the first step, doing like what I tried with like psychology sessions and stuff. It was a good opening, but it didn't really go deep. And then once I started doing practices with my bodies, the jade egg, using this tool to literally massage the internal walls of the vagina, which is where often the trauma gets stored. So often when there's like numbness or like inability to orgasm, it's because there's stuck emotions literally in the body, in the vagina. And so that creates numbness. So like any muscle, you've got to massage it out, and that releases the tension, releases the emotions underneath that. So it's the same internally. So using a jade egg is one powerful tool, and then using a yoni wand, so it's like a crystal wand in the shape of like, it sometimes straight, but often it's nice just to go on like a bit curved, and that is a really powerful tool to also massage internally and do like reflexology, kind of releasing pressure points through the internal vagina walls. And that's what helps to really like soften it and breathe through that and build the connection again and break down that armor and the walls and the frozen numbness. So we have to do work internally and with the body. to heal sexual trauma.
I can't believe we don't know more about this. Like, it's something that should
Yeah,
be talked about.
like psychology and all that, that's working with the mind, like psyche, which it's a kind of only one aspect of the whole system. It's like the
Yes.
mind, body, soul. That's why I say it's one aspect to heal. It's often, hard in the Western system. You wouldn't go to a doctor to give you this sort of treatment, massaging you internally. So these tools are really powerful because you do it yourself, which is super healing because you don't want to go to a therapist to give you a yoni massage and then you get re-traumatized because you don't feel safe and you're just like, I don't even know this person. So it's best as women to do it for ourselves first, or with your romantic partner that you trust.
I
Yeah.
often find that those things are very clinical as well. And if you're trying to connect with your sexual self, that is something very personal. And you're almost trying, when you're in those settings of a doctor or a healthcare practitioner, you're almost trying to not be sexual, not think sexual thoughts, not, suppress that sexual side. So, yeah, I think you'd probably have to do it personally. So, yeah, definitely. I would love to hear a success story.
Yeah, I had a client, we were doing a lot of work with the womb, like reconnecting her to her womb, to her menstrual cycle, to clearing out some past traumas like around her sexuality. And she actually had an IUD inside of her, and her body rejected the IUD through our work. Like it actually was like, I don't want this inside of me anymore. And her body like just dispelled the IUD. So that was wild that happened. And then she started on the journey of wanting to get pregnant, and it was like super quick, like straight after that happened, maybe like a few months later, her and her husband got pregnant. So that was one story. And there's been a lot of women who have been numb and then had their first orgasm, and also women who are trying for babies and then they get pregnant. Like literally, like I feel like I'm like a womb whisperer. I've always said this, like like there's this like magical wand that I wave and women just get pregnant, straight away. So it's really powerful.
Wow, hearing that story, that's amazing. Oh my gosh, that's great. So, tantric practices can help to reconnect your body and to help the right hormones come into place so that you can fall pregnant. How does it work?
From a medical perspective, obviously, that's not my realm. There's no logical explanation, but I feel from more the energetic perspective, which is the realms, that I work in, what I feel is happening is just really the woman is clearing out any fears, limitations, any stuck emotions that are in her, because the womb holds a lot of these like unconscious memories, unconscious emotions. So every time we bleed, each month we bleed, we have a chance to release those. And if we're not consciously menstruating and actually paying attention to what's coming up and moving the emotions through our body, then it gets stuck. And so there's like this stuck energy in your womb that's not really a right home for the soul to come through, that wants to birth through you. So I feel as though we go in and I help them clear out some of these stuck emotions. And the womb is like this beautiful, pristine, clear space, and then it happens. And also, like I was sharing before, reconnecting to the body, trusting your body, because that's also a thing that I feel can block us from getting pregnant, is the fear around it, because we're not connected to the body. So it's like, oh, I don't even trust my body knows what to do, so that can be unconsciously blocking. And the soul knows, it's like, she's not ready for me to come down. Like there's a really good book called Spirit Babies. That's a really good one about basically connecting to the spirit of the baby and calling it in and preparing your whole vessel to be ready to house it and birth it.
It just goes to show how much getting pregnant is not necessarily medical. There might not actually be a medical reason behind why you're having trouble falling pregnant. And a lot of people just put it down to stress. And sometimes like that is a huge factor. But, it's just as much being connected with your body and understanding what your body needs and what your body is telling you. That's one of the best things about being a registered nurse and being a doula, having the medical side and then the spiritual and being really connected with oneself. I can kind of put the two together and take the best of both worlds, right?
Yeah, it's so good.
So I want to go to the side of people who aren't pregnant yet. I would love to hear about how women who aren't yet pregnant and aren't yet ready, but will be soon, how they can start to reconnect with their sexual selves in preparation for after they've gone through this transition so that they can reconnect more easily.
Yeah, because like this is the thing. It's like if you don't have a amazing sex life with your partner and with yourself, like a self connection before you have a baby, it's going to be usually pretty hard to connect to that after because, now like after everything we've said, like now your body is now feeding a human child and there's now three of you. It's not just the two of you anymore. So it really starts before and it starts with yourself. So you can only really feel as connected sexually to your partner, to anyone, to the depths that you feel connected to yourself sexually. And that starts, with how comfortable you feel in your body. It's a huge aspect. If you're uncomfortable in your body, you don't like your body, you just feel like disconnected, like it feels like you're operating this thing around. Like I used to feel this. I felt like I was just living from here up. And it was like, didn't really have much awareness of what was going on in my body, couldn't feel intuitive hits or anything. So it really requires coming into the body first. And that descent into your body really requires you to feel a lot because, as I mentioned, our body is where traumas and emotions are stored. So you got to be willing to feel. And doesn't mean you're going to go into a depression or be like crying every day, but working with a coach or a healer, mentor in this realm, somatic therapist can help you just face some of those emotions that are blocking you from feeling in your body. So yeah, coming into your body, feeling that experience, and then doing practices like self-pleasure and the jade egg. Erotic dance is another beautiful modality that I personally use and teach, in my women's gatherings and with women's circles, like really moving your body, like not just dancing to like boppy music, like getting some sexy music on and like really getting into your hips and like really feeling turned on by yourself through your movements, these things. And doing it with other women is so powerful because there's not this like, there's no need to perform. You're in your own experience, and having other women there to like celebrate that with is so healing. A lot of the time, we're brainwashed as women to be, our sexuality is like some performance, and because of the porn industry and then, the media. So reclaiming that for yourself, it's like, this is not for anyone else, but for me, because I feel so good in my body. And then that obviously just overflows into your partnership. So this is really where it starts, is with yourself.
It's so important to be connected with yourself in your pregnancy, and that's so important to tap into your body and how it's feeling, maybe not sexually, but also it's the essence of being pregnant and following your feeling. That's what I teach all of my clients. The mum intuition is real, and
Yes.
not just listening to the doctors, standing up for yourself and telling them, no, I don't feel that this is the right thing, really being intuitive. And then also I kind of like jumped ahead into birth, but yeah, you can still explore sexually when you're pregnant. It might be a little bit uncomfortable because your cervix comes lower and lower as your baby gets heavier and bigger, but you can still explore all your sexuality while you're pregnant. And sometimes women even feel sexier than they did when they weren't pregnant. It's amazing to see them, finding themselves becoming like almost completely different woman.
Yeah, well, that can also happen. Like I've had that with some clients actually. I was sharing before, if you're not sexual before, it's going to be harder after, but like it actually has been the case for some women where birthing the child has actually been their sexual awakening. One of my close friends, she had a full sexual awakening through her birth. She was not really connected to her body, her sexuality before, but that like unlocked something deep.
You're connecting with your primal self. You're not even there. It's completely different. You're somewhere else. If you're choosing to birth naturally and without any medication or anything like that, that is the essence of being the primal woman almost.
Yeah.
It's such a huge transformation that you go through when you become a mother. And it's so important to remember that you've given birth to a baby, and it doesn't mean that your body is no longer sexual. Pregnancy and birth have a sexual side too, as we were just saying. And it's just as important to foster your relationship with your partner as it is to build that relationship with your baby. So, I can't say it enough.
Yes.
Don't be afraid.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to be sexual because there's nothing wrong with it. This is who we're meant to be, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. I just wanted to mention just something about that. Like, I feel that the fragment is also to do with the Eve and the Lilith, that kind of from the origin stories of being either the wife, the mother, or the seductress, the whore, that energy. So in our unconscious, there is this fragment between, and we feel as though, okay, before birth, I was, the sexually a woman. Now I'm a mother. Now I'm just this archetype. So it's important before birth, I feel, to do this integration of those two, because we don't have to choose between mother and like sexual, being. It's both. Like, we are always an integrated being, and obviously different archetypes will be more prominent in different phases, but it doesn't mean we have to choose and disregard another part of us. So that's a big piece before birth, is like really working with integration of those aspects inside of us.
That was really beautifully said. And it's not taboo. It's something real,
Yeah.
We think of it as taboo, like if you're sexual, then you're like a porn star. It's not like that,
Yeah.
And okay, it's something personal that you should experience in the bedroom or wherever you experience it, but it's not taboo, and we should talk about it more. So talk about it with your girlfriends, talk about it with your partner, put it out there. Don't be scared. This is something that's real, and we were made to have sex. We were made to feel good and not feel pain. If it's painful, then there's something wrong, and you need to be communicating these things. Yeah, I used to have a lot of painful sex. So then I found my husband, and we have the best sex ever, honestly. Nadine, it's wonderful to talk to you today. I've heard so much, and I'm really curious to try some of these things out, definitely for myself. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
I hope this episode has helped our listeners to feel more confident in finding their sexual selves again, especially after having a baby. You can find Nadine at Tantric Alchemy Official on Instagram. And if you're enjoying the podcast, make sure to give us a follow and rate the show. And if you know someone who you think needs to hear this episode, give it a share so that we can spread the word and educate more mamas and women worldwide. And we'll see you next Monday for another juicy episode. For more information on pregnancy, birth and parenthood, head over to my website or Instagram at blissfulbirth.co. And just a little reminder, the information contained in this podcast is here to educate and empower and does not replace the advice of your own healthcare provider.